The complete work of Swami Vivekananda, Video 9. It is the most difficult thing in this world to work and not care for the result, to help a man and never think that he ought to be grateful, to do some good work and at the same time never look to see whether it brings you name or fame or nothing at all. Even the most arrogant coward becomes brave when the world praises him. A fool can do heroic deeds when the approbation of society is upon him. But for a man to constantly do good without caring for the approbation of his fellow men is indeed the highest sacrifice man can perform. Great duty of the householder is to earn a living, but he must take care that he doesn't do it by telling lies or by cheating or by robbing others. And he must remember that his life is for the service of God and the poor. Knowing that mother and father are the visible representatives of God, the householder always and by all means must please them. If the mother is pleased and the father, God is pleased with the man, that child is really a good child who never speaks harsh words to his parents. Before parents, one must not utter jokes, must not show restlessness, must not show anger or temper. Before mother or father, a child must bow down low and stand up in their presence and must not take a seat until they order him to sit. If the householder has food and drinks and clothes, without first seeing that his mother and his father, his children, his wife and the poor are supplied, he is committing a sin. The mother and the father are the causes of this body, so a man must undergo 1,000 troubles in order to do good to them. Even so is his duty to his wife. No man should scold his wife, and he must always maintain her as if she were his own mother. And even when he is in the greatest difficulties and troubles, he must not show anger to his wife. He who thinks of another woman besides his wife, if he touches her even with his mind, that man goes to dark hell. Before woman, he must not talk improper language and never brag of his powers. He must not say, I have done this and I have done that. The householder must always please his wife with money, clothes, love, faith, and words like nectar, and never do anything to disturb her. That man who has succeeded in getting the love of a chaste wife has succeeded in his religion and has all the virtues. The following are duties towards children. A son should be lovingly reared up to his 4th year. He should be educated till he is 16. When he is 20 years of age, he should be employed in some work. He should then be treated affectionately by his father as his equal. Exactly in the same manner, the daughter should be brought up and should be educated with the greatest care. And when she marries, the father ought to give her jewels and wealth. Then the duty of the man is towards his brothers and sisters, and towards the children of his brothers and sisters, if they are very poor, and towards his other relatives, his friends and his servants. Then his duties are towards the people of the same village and the poor, and anyone that comes to him for help. Having sufficient means, if the householder doesn't take care to give to his relatives and to the poor, know him to be only a brute. He is not a human being. Excessive attachment to food, clothes, and the tending of the body and dressing of the hair should be avoided. The householder must be pure in heart and clean in body, always active and always ready for work. To his enemies, the householder must be a hero. Them he must resist. That is the duty of the householder. He must not sit down in a corner and weep and talk nonsense about non-resistance. If he doesn't show himself a hero to his enemies, he has not done his duty. And to his friends and relatives, he must be as gentle as a lamb. It is the duty of the householder not to pay reverence to the wicked, because if he reverences the wicked people of the world, he patronizes wickedness, and it will be a great mistake if he disregards those who are worthy of respect, the good people. He must not be gushing in his friendship. He must not go out of the way, making friends everywhere. He must watch the actions of the man he wants to make friends with and their dealings with other men, reason upon them, and then make friends. These three things he must not talk of. He must not talk in public of his own fame. He must not preach his own name or his own powers. He must not talk of his wealth or of anything that has been told to him privately. A man must not say he is poor or that he is wealthy. He must not brag of his wealth. Let him keep his own counsel. This is his religious duty. This is not mere worldly wisdom. If a man doesn't do so, he may be held to be immoral. The householder is the basis, the prop of the whole society. He is the principal earner. The poor, the weak, the children, and the women who do not work, all life upon the householder. So there must be certain duties that he has to perform, and these duties must make him feel strong to perform them, and not make him think that he is doing things beneath his ideal. Therefore, if he has done something weak or has made some mistake, he must not say so in public. And if he is engaged in some enterprise and knows he is sure to fail in it, he must not speak of it. Such self-exposure is not only uncalled for, but also unnerves the man and makes him unfit for the performance of his legitimate duties in life. At the same time, he must struggle hard to acquire these things, firstly knowledge and secondly wealth. It is his duty, and if he does not do his duty, he is nobody. A householder who doesn't struggle to get wealth is immoral. If he is lazy and content to lead an idle life, he is immoral, because upon him depend hundreds. If he gets rich, hundreds of others will be thereby supported. If there were not in this city hundreds who had striven to become rich and who had acquired wealth, where would all this civilization and these almshouses and great houses be? Going after wealth in such a case is not bad, because that wealth is for distribution. The householder is the center of life and society. It is a worship for him to acquire and spend wealth nobly. For the householder who struggles to become rich by good means and for good purposes is doing practically the same thing for the attainment of salvation as the anchorite does in his cell when he is praying. For in them we see only the different aspects of the same virtue of self-surrender and self-sacrifice, prompted by the feeling of devotion to God and to all that is His. He must struggle to acquire a good name by all means. He must not gamble. He must not move in the company of the wicked. He must not tell lies and must not be the cause of trouble to others. Often people enter into things they have not the means to accomplish, with the result that they cheat others to attain their own needs. Then there is in all things the time factor to be taken into consideration. What at one time might be a failure would perhaps at another time be a very great success. The householder must speak the truth and speak gently, using words which people like, which will do good to others, nor should he talk of the business of other men. The householder, by digging tanks, by planting trees on the roadside, by establishing rest houses for man and animals, by making roads and building bridges, goes toward the same goal as the greatest yogi. This is one part of the doctrine of Karma Yoga, activity, the duty of the householder. There is a passage later on where it says that If the householder dies in battle, fighting for his country or his religion, he comes to the same goal as the yogi by meditation, showing thereby that what is duty for one is not duty for another. At the same time, it doesn't say that this duty is lowering the other, elevating. Each duty has its own place, and according to the circumstances in which we are placed, we must perform our duties. One idea comes out of all this, the condemnation of all weakness. This is a particular idea in all our teachings which I like, either in philosophy or in religion or in work. If you read the Vedas, you will find this word always repeated: fearlessness. Fear nothing. Fear is a sign of weakness. A man must go about his duties without taking notice of the sneers and the ridicule of the world. If a man retires from the world to worship God, he must not think that those who live in the world and work for the good of the world are not worshipping God. Neither must those who live in the world for wife and children think that those who give up the world are low vagabonds. Each is great in his own place. This thought I will illustrate by a story. A certain king used to inquire of all the sannyasins that came to his country, which is the greater man, he who gives up the world and becomes a sannyasin, or he who lives in the world and performs his duties as a householder. Many wise men sought to solve the problem. Some asserted that the sannyasin was the greater, upon which the king demanded that they should prove their assertion. When they couldn't, he ordered them to marry and become householders. Then others came and said, the householder who performs his duties is the greater man. Of them too the king demanded proofs. When they couldn't give them, he made them also settle down as householders. At last there came a young sannyasin, and the king similarly inquired of him also. He answered, each, O king, is equally great in his place. Prove this to me, asked the king. I'll prove it to you, said the sannyasin. But you must first come and live as I do for a few days, that I may be able to prove to you what I say. The king consented and followed the sannyasin out of his own territory and passed through many other countries until they came to a great kingdom. In the capital of that kingdom, a great ceremony was going on. The king and the sannyasin heard the noise of drums and music, and heard also the criers. The people were assembled in the streets in gala dress, and a great proclamation was being made. The king and the sannyasin stood there to see what was going on. The crier was proclaiming loudly that the princess, daughter of the king of that country, was about to choose a husband from among those assembled before her. It was an old custom in India for princes to choose husbands in this way. Each princess had certain ideas of the sort of man she wanted for a husband. Some would have the handsomest man, others would have only the most learned, other again the richest, and so on. All the princes of the neighborhood put on their bravest attire and presented themselves before her. Sometimes they too had their own criers to enumerate their advantages and the reasons why they hoped the princess would choose them. The princess was taken round on a throne in the most splendid array and looked at and heard about them. If she was not pleased with what she saw and heard, she said to her bearers, move on, and no more notice was taken of the rejected suitors. If, however, the princess was pleased with any one of them, she threw a garland of flower over him, and he became her husband. The princess of the country to which our king and the sannyasin had come was having one of these interesting ceremonies. She was the most beautiful princess in the world, and the husband of the princess would be ruler of the kingdom after her father's death. The idea of this princess was to marry the handsomest man, but she could not find the right one. But she couldn't find the right one to please her. Several times these meetings had taken place, but the princess couldn't select a husband. This meeting was the most splendid of all. More people than ever had come to it. The princess came in on a throne, and the bearers carried her from place to place. She didn't seem to care for anyone, and everyone became disappointed that this meeting also was going to be a failure. Just then came a young man, a sannyasin, handsome as if the sun had come down to the earth, and stood in one corner of the assembly, watching what was going on. The throne with the princess came near him, and as soon as she saw the beautiful sannyasin, she stopped and threw the garland over him. The young sannyasin seized the garland and threw it off, exclaiming, "What nonsense is this? I am a sannyasin. What is marriage to me?" The king of that country thought that perhaps this man was poor and so dared not marry the princess, and said to him, "With my daughter goes half my kingdom now, and the whole kingdom after my death," and put the garland again on the sannyasin. The young man threw it off once more, saying, "Nonsense, I don't want to marry," and walked quickly away from the assembly. Now the princess had fallen so much in love with this young man that she said, "I must marry this man or I shall die," and she went after him to bring him back. Then our other sannyasin, who had brought the king there, said to him, "King, let us follow this pair." So they walked after them, but at a good distance behind. The young sannyasin, who had refused to marry the princess, walked out into the country for several miles. When he came to a forest and entered into it, the princess followed him, and the other two followed them. Now this young sannyasin was well acquainted with the forest and knew all the intricate paths in it. He suddenly passed into one of these and disappeared, and the princess couldn't discover him. After trying for a long time to find him, she sat down under a tree and began to weep, for she didn't know the way out. Then our king and the other sannyasin came up to her and said, "Do not weep, we will show you the way out of this forest, but it is too dark for us to find it now. Here is a big tree, let us rest under it, and in the morning we will go early and show you the road." Now a little bird and his wife and their little ones lived on that tree in a nest. This little bird looked down and saw the three people under the tree and said to his wife, "My dear, what shall we do? Here are some guests in the house, and it is winter, and we have no fire." So he flew away and got a bit of burning firewood in his beak and dropped it before the guests, to which they added fuel and made a blazing fire. But the little bird was not satisfied. He said again to his wife, "My dear, what shall we do? There is nothing to give these people to eat, and they are hungry. We are householders. It is our duty to feed anyone who comes to the house. I must do what I can. I will give them my body." So he plunged into the midst of the fire and perished. The guests saw him falling and tried to save him, but he was too quick for them. The little bird's wife saw what her husband did, and she said, "Here are three persons, and only one little bird for them to eat. It is not enough. It is my duty as a wife not to let my husband's effort go in vain. Let them have my body also." Then she fell into the fire and was burned to death. Then the three baby birds, when they saw what was done and that there was still not enough food for the three guests, said, "Our parents have done what they could, and still it is not enough. It is our duty to carry on the work of our parents. Let our bodies go too." And they all dashed down into the fire also. Amazed at what they saw, the three people couldn't, of course, eat these birds. They passed the night without food, and in the morning the king and the sannyasin showed the princess the way, and she went back to her father. Then the sannyasin said to the king, "King, you have seen that each is great in his own place. If you want to live in the world, live like those birds, ready at any moment to sacrifice yourself for others. If you want to renounce the world, be like that young man to whom the most beautiful woman and a kingdom were as nothing. If you want to be a householder, hold your life a sacrifice for the welfares of others. And if you choose the life of renunciation, do not even look at beauty and money and power. Each is great in his own place, but the duty of the one is not the duty of the other."